So COSATU is calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to act more firmly against corrupt officials. The call comes after allegations implicating government officials in COVID-19 procurement irregularities, alleged COVID-19 procurement irregularities. Let's get more on this now. Bring in COSATU spokesperson Sizwe Pamla joining us this afternoon from Johannesburg. I believe, Sizwe, you say in a rather strongly worded statement, South Africa is sinking under the weight of corruption under Ramaphosa's watch. Question is, can he stop the country sinking further?
Well, we hope he can, and we hope he does, because we don't have a choice. If you look at where we are as a country, I mean, we have more than 3 trillion in debt. We have millions of people who are on welfare. It means that the limited resources that we have, we need to be spending those resources wisely to ensure that, firstly, we take care of the most vulnerable, and secondly, to really focus on kickstarting the economy. The idea that at this time, with all of the problems that this country has, you have people who still believe that it makes sense for them to steal. It is totally unacceptable. But having said that, it is really up to the president. We say it is up to the president because he does have a mandate. And not only does he have a mandate, in the build-up to the Nasrec conference, he made it very clear that he was committing himself to be the champion of the fight against corruption. So what we are calling for is that honor the commitment you made to the people of South Africa, because as things stand, things are deteriorating further under your watch. And as a president, this is not a sustainable way of maintaining support. You quoted Nehao, the biggest affiliate of COSATU, with some strong views on where things are going to go if there's no change. That is the sentiments, actually, that is not just coming from Nehao, but from most of our affiliated unions. Over the last 2 weeks, we've been in these debates and discussions, and workers are really disillusioned on the ground, because while these workers are actually sitting at the PSCBC trying to resolve the issue of their wage increases that were not given to them in April, they wake up to these headlines when they see that millions of taxpayers' money is actually being paid to people who wouldn't have told you what a PPP is in January this year. All of a sudden now there's service providers. That is really what is making things difficult, is because you have people who are on the front line of the fight against COVID-19, who are dying on a daily basis, who have not been paid their salary adjustments, and they wake up to read that there is money, but this money is going to those who are politically connected.
And you referenced the ANC conference at Nasrec in 2017. COSATU was among President Cyril Ramaphosa's supporters going into that conference. There was Ramaphoria, a term that was coined then. Ramaphosa, even in his acceptance speech, spoke about fighting corruption. Some will say he actually sold the country a dream, because just given how entrenched corruption is in the state and private sector, it was never anything that he would have been able to fix between 2017 and 2020. Do you agree that he oversold his campaign?
No. What we are saying as COSATU is saying we believed him then, and we still believe that he can still intervene, he can still make a difference. What we want to see is a president who's trying. We want to see effort here. We are here to support him. We want to be constructive partners. We want to work with him to fight this fight. But what we are not seeing is action. That's the problem. You can read his letter. It's a very strong-worded letter that he wrote to South Africans this morning. But criminals, the only language they understand is prosecution and prison. You can be a tough-talking president, you can be a tough-talking minister of police, you can be a tough-talking head of the justice system. If you do not prosecute and send people to prison, criminals are going to continue to do what they do best, which is to steal. So what we are saying is to say, president needs to show us that he's trying, and then we'll be there to support him. The problem right now is that he took over as a president of the country in February 2018. 2.5 years later, we are yet to see really inroads in the fight against corruption. And in fact, we are seeing a situation that is deteriorating further and further. So we still support him. We still want to see him succeed. The problem is we want to see action. And so far, all he has offered us are commitments and statements. And that is not enough as far as workers are concerned.
So what do you say then to those who support the president this afternoon who'll say to you, Sizwe, you're being unfair because the president, for example, on the latest allegations has signed the SIU proclamation giving rise, of course, or allowing the process to continue in investigating some of the latest allegations. It doesn't fall within the president's office, for example, to make arrests and prosecute people.
When you are in a crisis situation, you need to be ready to make sure that you don't just sign paperwork and don't do follow-ups. Let's just give you a case in point. When this country wanted to convince the world that it was the right country to host the 2010 Soccer World Cup, we made a commitment to FIFA, for an example, to say we will put special courts to prosecute people who will be committing crimes during that period. And we did so. So if those special courts, if we could bend over backwards to accommodate FIFA, an association that was coming here to host, to convene a soccer tournament, when you are faced with a crisis, we have 3 trillion in debt, and we are borrowing at an inflationary cost, it means we are in a crisis. So what we want to see is much more than just proclamations being signed with no outcomes. The fact of the matter is that he does have the powers, and we want to see him using those powers, but not only just using them, we want to see results. If he is unable to do anything about this fight against corruption, he needs to tell us. But it is not enough to be told that the president is trying, because when he came in as a president, he understood what he was up against. He was a deputy president of this country. He understood the fight against corruption that he was committing himself to fighting. So we are still supporting the president, but we want him to do much more than he has done so far, because as things stand, the situation is deteriorating, and we find it unacceptable as workers and as taxpayers who are going to foot the bill when all this is said and done.
Do you think, Sizwe Pamla, that Cyril Ramaphosa is a weak president, as dubbed by some?
So far, everything points to the fact that he is weak. As things stand, everything points to the fact that he is weak, but we want him to prove all of us wrong. We want him to fight against that perception, and the only way to fight against that perception is to actually do things that will prove to everybody that he is not weak. As things stand, you cannot be a president of a country where 10% of the money is looted, 10% of the budget is looted. You cannot be president of a country where UIF test fund is stolen by employers, and when politically connected individuals are facing allegations of corruption, and you do nothing about that. So we want him to prove all of those who think that he is weak by acting in a manner that shows that he is not a weak president.
But you're among those who believe he's weak at this stage, am I right?
So far, we are looking at the evidence, we are looking at the lack of action, and we are saying we understand why people believe that he is weak. The reason why we still call on him to act is because we believe that he can actually still change this perception. But all of the evidence, you cannot look at the evidence and say that he is not weak. There's nothing that is extraordinary that he has done to actually shut all of those people who believe that he's weak.
Very quickly, Sizwe, in the last few paragraphs of your statement today, you say that as COSATU, you continue to support the government and you're willing to collaborate with them in trying to build the country going forward. I'm obviously paraphrasing here, but then you then go on to say that there will be a parting of ways between the Federation and this administration if corruption is left unchecked and workers not protected. Some who've been following COSATU over the more than 2 decades of this democracy will say, well, that's not a new position by COSATU, and actually you're not likely to do it anyway, so why should the government take it seriously?
Well, you do not want to get to a point where workers actually end up doing that. When I say me, you do not want, I mean, the President Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't want us to get to that level. The reality is that we're not just making this as a threat. We are saying this because we are afraid of the levels of frustrations that are growing on the ground.
Let me ask you this question differently, Sizwe Pamla, because we're running out of time. In terms of timelines, you want the government to act on allegations of corruption. When will you say, as COSATU, we're breaking ties because the ANC government has not acted sufficiently against corruption? Will it be in December of 2020, June of 2021?
Firstly, let me answer you like this. On the issue of the PPEs, the lack of PPEs, we have started a campaign. We had a meeting with our biggest union, how we will be convening our own affiliates in the sector. Starting on the 21st of this month of August, we are starting to mobilize. We will have pickets, we will have activities. Ultimately, we are going to have a strike in the public service. So we're already starting with mobilization, starting on the 25th of this March. We will hope that sanity will prevail, that we can give this administration the benefit of the doubt. But I'm telling you that starting on the 21st of August, we are already starting a mobilization campaign in the public service to push back against government's failure to protect public servants. And we'll take things from there.
Sizwe Pamela from COSATU, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.